Hey, what's up everybody? This is Like It's 1985, and today we'll be taking a look at the knockoff, way oversized Transformers Age of Extinction Bumblebee figure. And before we get further into this review, of course we want to compare it to the original Hasbro version, which was a deluxe class figure. So first up, let me show you the comparison here. Yeah. This knockoff is way oversized. Really, really cool. It ends up being about a leader class size figure, and actually we'll see in the review here coming up that it actually is a bit taller actually than some of my leader class figures that I have in my collection. So very, very nice. I do like the style of Camaro as opposed to the new one. Nothing wrong with the new Camaro. It's just that you see a lot of them on the street today. And so I do like this older style Camaro for Bumblebee here. So also, if you are familiar with collecting scale die-cast cars, which I do collect a fair amount of those, I can do a comparison here. This is a 1/24 scale NASCAR, and you can see the actual Bumblebee Camaro here is actually much bigger in terms of scale as compared to the 1/24 scale die-cast NASCAR. So just kind of a point of reference if you happen to collect die-cast cars, which I do. So here's a comparison with Human Alliance Roadbuster. Human Alliance figures were typically larger than the deluxe figures in car mode, so you can get an idea here of how large the knockoff Bumblebee figure is, just as a comparison here with Human Alliance Roadbuster. Okay, so here I brought in the Vinyltech / Alternators yellow version of Trax, and as you can see, the knockoff Bumblebee figure is even bigger than that, so quite impressive scale with the knockoff figure. So, in terms of just the overall look, it's identical, except for the fact that on the knockoff, there is not the Autobot symbols on either side of the car. So that is missing, which is understandable for a knockoff. No big deal. You could probably put some of your own Autobot symbols there if you wanted to. But really pleased with this. I mean, you could actually, except for the fact that you can see through the windows and see the robot parts, you could actually display this as a car on your desk, and it would actually make a pretty good display there. So yeah, really pleased with this oversized Bumblebee figure here in car mode. So I will go ahead and transform this off camera, just because we've all seen the transformation, but it does actually transform almost identically to the original Hasbro version. Two small differences, which I will show off in robot mode, but nothing major in terms of differences in transformation. So let's go ahead and take a look at robot mode next. So let's have a closer look at the ankle area. There actually are 2 points of articulation at the ankle. One is here, and this joint is fairly tight. But there's also a joint here where this piece of plastic connects to the foot. And it does have a motion where you can roll it back due to the transformation. And when it goes back like this, it does make the figure just a little bit shorter. But also, I think it might lead to the figure being a bit back heavy. And with a figure of this size, with this amount of plastic, that could potentially be a problem. This actually frequently goes back like this when I'm messing around with the figure trying to pose it. It's annoying. It's more on the annoying side than it's a real problem, but yeah, you can see how that could lead to some instability and at the very least some annoyance. But that's just due to the sheer amount of plastic on this figure. It could be tighter in my opinion, but not too terribly a big deal. So, at 10.5 inches tall, the knockoff figure towers over the Hasbro original deluxe-sized Bumblebee figure. So before I go into the more differences between the two figures, I do want to talk about the joints on this knockoff figure here. I find that the knees and ankles in particular, those joints are a bit on the loose side. Not terribly bad. He stands just fine in a kind of a straight up position, but anything else, if you try to pose him around, you're going to run into some frustration trying to get a pose other than kind of a straight up and down stance here. So I'm not sure if that's because of the joint itself is not strong enough to support all this significant amount of plastic here. And this is a lot of plastic here in terms of weight, and so maybe they could have used a stronger screw connection or whatever it is they use to assemble the joints there. So it's a bit on the loose side. If you just have it standing on your shelf here, straight up and down, you're not going to have any problems. Plastic quality is good, and the articulation is identical to what you see here with the Hasbro version, so I'm not going to go over that in this review. I do want to touch on some of the differences in the transformation in the fact that you can see here on the knockoff, the actual chest here does not transform like it does here. On the Hasbro original, you have the separation of the bumper and what becomes the chest in robot mode. You can see there. This is one solid piece of plastic there. Not a big deal, but it is something worth mentioning. Looking at the back on the original, you can see how this back section here kind of separates. There's a joint there, allowing you kind of just to lift it up like that and just give it a little bit extra, a little bit of transformation on the back. There is no such joint on the back of the knockoff. It's a solid piece of plastic at that point there, so you can't do that on the back here. You can see there would have been a line here on the original, whereas there's not one on the knockoff here. And by a line, I mean an actual separation point. So not a big deal. That's not a big deal to me. In fact, I don't mind having a solid piece of plastic here in the back. It doesn't really detract from the figure, I don't think. In my opinion, it's not a big deal to have that difference. So other differences, well, the other difference is the fact that the color is different on the original. The original is a darker, almost more to the side of being orange, as opposed to this is more yellow in comparison. You do actually have some differences in the torso area. I can see just off the top of my head here. You can see this is actually a different color of plastic, or it's painted, whereas here it's just bland orange plastic. You got some silver paint here at the crotch. No such paint there. But you can see the sculpt is identical, just blown up into a larger scale. So yeah, that's pretty much all I can see in terms of the differences in the figure itself. The figure does come with one additional weapon, which is actually pretty significant. This figure only includes the little missile here, but the knockoff not only includes the missile gimmick, but you have the BFG. This is a fantastic, solid, well, not really solid, but it's hollow, but it's a big, bulky weapon, and it's got some nice, silver and gold or bronze paint in there. So yeah, and he can wield it just fine. You can just plug it into his hand here, either hand you want. Plugs in just fine. And if you didn't want to use it with this Bumblebee figure, you could actually use it with another figure. Although I don't know if there's a lot of figures that have that peg size. That's a very large peg. So if you can find a figure with a peg size about that size, well, certainly you can use that weapon with that figure. But as it is, it's a nice extra. To have this included with the figure. It's something that actually improves on the original in terms of weaponry. So it's definitely a nice addition here with a knockoff figure. So here is a size comparison with Revenge of the Fallen Leader Class Ironhide. And you can see Bumblebee here does actually stand taller than even Leader Class Ironhide. So in this size comparison, you can see that even standing straight up, the Leader Class First Edition Age of Extinction Optimus Prime figure is actually shorter than the knockoff Bumblebee figure. Quite amazing there in terms of height difference in robot mode. So in conclusion, if you want a Leader Class Age of Extinction Bumblebee figure, this is the figure to get. This is really, really good in terms of being a knockoff. Again, like I say, no major quality issues in terms of plastic. Transforms the same, except for a few bits on the front and the back, like I mentioned before. But other than that, this is just a upsized, really cool figure from the original Hasbro version. So, and way upsized, as you saw in the size comparison. So, really can recommend this definitely if you're looking for, again, a Leader Class Age of Extinction Bumblebee figure with a big ass gun. Alright guys and gals, catch you guys later.